With recent negotiations, the odds of another stimulus check and another stimulus bill are frankly better than ever. However, there's been a growing popularity around the idea of targeting the next stimulus checks to fewer people. This was led by the moderate Democrat in the Senate, Joe Manchin, who felt that we were sending payments to people who didn't necessarily need payments. This was actually voted on as a non-binding amendment in the Senate as they were structuring the budget reconciliation bill last week as part of their Vote-a-Rama 800 amendment chaos in the middle of the night. And also President Biden has said that he's open to potentially paring down these checks to fewer people via lower income limits, but he's not open to lowering the check amount from $1,400 to any lower amount because he promised the $2,000 top-up checks. But in the last day, there's been growing opposition towards targeting these checks to fewer people. Some pretty fiery opposition. So I'm going to talk about the people who are very against sending these checks to fewer people the next time around. Bernie Sanders in the Senate is the loudest voice here. He said it's, quote, unbelievable that some Democrats, quote, want to lower the income eligibility for direct payments from $75,000 to $50,000 for individuals and $150,000 to $100,000 for couples. He followed this up by making a pretty fair point, if you ask me, that there are working class people who received a check under the Trump administration who then wouldn't receive a check under the Biden administration, and that just doesn't make sense given their policies and the platform that Biden went into the presidency on. Basically, just more liberal. The definition of being more liberal. Sanders says he's all for a steep cliff with the payments, so that way someone who makes several $100,000 a year doesn't receive any form of stimulus payment. Right now there's a ramp down with payments, and of course, someone who makes $200,000 a year as a couple isn't receiving a full payment, but that ramp down might mean that they receive something. So he's all for having a steep ramp down, so there's not very high income earners receiving these payments, but he says $55,000 a year is not rich, and he's angry about this. So with Bernie's fiery stance on this, I think we're going to likely see more legislators and these high up officials want to go back to the income limits that we saw in the first and second round of checks. AOC has backed up Bernie Sanders, and she tweeted this tweet that says it would be outrageous if we ran on giving more relief and ended up doing the opposite. It's sad that it's even an argument in the Dem party. COVID relief is disaster relief, and it's urgent. Our first act out of the gate should be big, bold, and strong, not weaker and smaller. And then on top of this, we also have Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who doesn't support narrowing who receives the checks by such a dramatic amount, at least. She brought up that under the current kind of sentiment, the current idea of paring down these checks at $50,000 limit, that a school teacher or a fireman who earns $60,000 a year wouldn't receive a stimulus payment, and she feels that doesn't make sense. She believes the phase out for checks should begin somewhere between that $50,000 and possibly up to the same $75,000 mark, but she says she hasn't decided, where exactly it should land within that range. So I really think if we see a phase out, it will probably only be $5,000 or $10,000 less than we saw in the last rounds at most. And the good news here is if we want to take this as good news and zoom out just a little bit, there's no longer a debate as to whether there should be another stimulus check. It's kind of spun to the debate on how we should structure it, which should be looked at as progress for the fact that the odds of this are very likely at this point. So I'd just like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.